Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Public Works Committee for August the 12th, 2020. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices, except for the ones you're using right now, are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Going through roll call, can you please indicate your presence when I call your name? Councillor Collins.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Farr? Not present. Councillor Ferguson?
Present.
Councillor Jackson? See you.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Marula?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Nan? Councillor Pauls? Councillor Pearson?
Here.
Good morning. Councillor Vanderbeek?
Here.
And Councillor Whitehead?
Top of the morning to you.
Good morning. Before we start in on the agenda, I'd like to recognize that during a virtual awards ceremony on July 21st, the Municipal Waste Association announced that the City of Hamilton Waste Management Group received 3 awards for their 2019 promotion and education programs. The awards were won in the following categories. In the category for Best Waste Collection Calendar, the city received a bronze award for the 2019 Recycling and Waste Collection Calendar. I'm sure you all recall getting that in the mail and sending that to residents. In the category for Best Marketing Campaign, the City of Hamilton received a bronze award for the 2019 education program to remove yard waste from the green bin. Again, as everybody recalls, was a significant challenge and a really overwhelming success in the compliance rates that we were able to achieve. In the category for other promotion and educational material, the city received a 3rd bronze award for the 2019 Cigarette Litter Prevention Program Pocket Ashtray Campaign. So I'd like to congratulate the team working in community outreach, including Angela Story, Jackie Colangelo, Megan McDonald, and Ruthie McComb for creating the programs and preparing the award submissions, as well as staff from recycling and waste disposal and waste collections for supporting and promotion, for supporting all the promotion and education programs last year. Awards recognize how the City of Hamilton education programs stand out compared to other municipalities and provides a really nice pat on the back for their efforts and accomplishments as a team. So congratulations to everybody involved there. Great work. Virtual claps. Okay, on the agenda, approval of the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are changes to the agenda. We have an added communication item 4.2, which is a delegation request from Bill Fitzgerald, Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority, respecting the permanent closure and sale of a portion of Ship Street, Niagara Street, and Hilliard Street in Hamilton, and that is for a future meeting. We also have an added notice of motion, item 10.1, respecting Sir Alan McNabb Tennis Court improvements in Ward 14. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented. Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Just waiting. Here we go. Thank you. On declarations of interest, are there any declarations from members of the committee? Not seeing any. Thank you. On the approval of the previous minutes for July 8th, 2020, I need a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes of the July 8th meeting. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Thanks, everyone. On communications. Oh, yeah. Oh, Councillor Pauls, we're just approving the minutes of the previous meeting. You're in favor? Just give us a thumbs up.
On now, okay?
Sorry, we didn't hear the beginning of that.
It's just I was at another WebEx meeting. I just got off and I'm on now on your meeting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we just need a thumbs up on the approval of the
Thumbs up. Can
Yeah.
you see me? Yes,
We can
thank
see
you.
you. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. And Councillor Nan, you also gave a thumbs up on the approval of the minutes. Thank you. Okay. On communication, we have correspondence from David Kebick respecting noise pollution in the Parkview West community. And the recommendation is be received and referred to the General Manager of Public Works for appropriate action. Councillor Marula?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on this particular item, this is yet another example of the Parkview neighborhood not getting the attention they deserve from the provincial government. We, as you know, have had a history in East Hamilton with respect to air and noise pollution as it pertains to industry. And since 1995, when the Conservative Party of Ontario dismantled environmental law in Ontario and made it non-mandatory or voluntary, what we've seen is a disregard for not only the environment, but for quality of life of residents, not only in East End of Hamilton, but wherever there's a residential neighborhood adjoining an industrial core. So as we move forward as a municipality, we need to understand where we were, where we are now, where we're headed. And this particular issue has a long history of my office reaching out to local MPPs and hoping that somehow those messages would get sent to the governing party. But because the city has a habit now, and it's been an experiment gone awry, of electing opposition members, we're not at the table. And because we're not at the table, we're not being heard. And this is yet another example of now the residents coming forward, really looking at the noise issues that are not pertaining to the vehicular traffic, but more so to do with industry, but looking at creative ways of trying to integrate solutions to deal with missing in action members of provincial parliament and the province in not addressing environmental law, not only locally, but province-wide. So what's before us is going to be referred to the general manager. In the previous years, about 15 years ago, Burke Austin, who lived in that area, we looked at the wall option then and most recently within the last 5 years, and it was concluded based on experts that there's very little noise mitigation from industry if you build a wall. It may have some impact on the vehicular traffic, but looking at the vehicular traffic on Burlington or along that stretch of highway, the vehicular traffic is down to a point where you can have a hockey game on Burlington Street at any given time during the day. It's nowhere near what it used to be. And I empathize and I appreciate the concerns of the residents. And I'm going to move forward on this and try to build that wall if and only if and only because it will mitigate the industrial noise. Because I believe the vehicular aspect it's just not where it is. It's not where it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Presently, it's actually, from my perspective, not the issue. It's the industrial noise. So let's move forward. Let's have the general manager move forward with staff assessment. We did have a meeting, a town hall meeting at the water and sewer treatment plant on this particular issue surrounding noise and of the industry. We had a commitment from the Ministry of Environment who were present there, staff that is. Not one member of provincial parliament attended that town hall meeting, even though they were invited. Folks, we can, as a city, cannot sustain this missing in action of opposition members at the province and at the federal level. We need to start being in the tent, not outside. And I look forward to this moving forward to try to mitigate it. But I also look forward to defeating every single opposition member in the city, provincially and federally. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Councillor. And it's quite amazing. I can hear the industrial noises from the north end in my neighborhood in the middle of the night. So I can only imagine what it's like in neighborhoods that are right next door. So mover and a seconder to receive and refer, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Nan. All in favor? Councillor Pauls?
Yes, I'm in favor. I'm trying to get, yes.
Okay, thank you. Item 4.2, we got everybody, Alicia? Yeah. 4.2 is a delegation request. Bill Fitzgerald, Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority, respecting the permanent closure and sale of a portion of Ship Street, Niagara Street, and Hilliard Street, Hamilton, for a future meeting. So I need a mover and a seconder to approve the delegation. Moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pearson. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 5, consent items. I need a mover and a seconder to receive consent items 5.1 to 5.3, and then we'll put them on the floor and open discussion. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Is there any discussion on items 5.1, 5.2, or 5.3? Not seeing any. Is the Councillor Nan?
Thank you, through the chair. Just wanted to hear from staff in terms of the roll-up report on the bypass report. I noticed that our numbers are higher in 2019 than in 2018. And if staff could, for the public record, just do a quick high-level summary of those stats.
Sure. So through Mr. Chairman, Andrew Grice here, Director of Hamilton Water. So Councillor Nan is correct. Our volumes were higher in 2019, and that is predominantly related to the elevated lake levels that we experienced. So our plant can accept a base level of flow, and once we reach a certain capacity, we need to bypass our facility. What happened in 2019 with the elevated lake levels is that lake water was making its way into our sewer system and subsequently down to our wastewater treatment plant, which means we did not have as much buffer before we were required to bypass at the facility. So that really is the driver as to why we see a significant number of events in 2019. 2020, we also experienced some high lake levels, but the number of bypasses is not quite as high as we experienced in 2019.
Thank you. And just to break it down for the public who may be listening. So when we're talking about higher lake levels, what we are talking about here is significant snow melt and torrential rainfall events occurring more regularly here in our region, resulting in those higher lake waters, correct?
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct. But also to add to that is the control that they have over the Great Lakes system. So in order to move goods throughout the corridor, they regulate the level within the corridor. So all the way down to Montreal, they can control the lake levels in our entire Great Lakes water system. So that is probably the main driver as to why we see elevated lake levels. And certainly Hamilton Water has been proactively installing some devices to try and keep lake water out of our system. But given our current situation, when lake levels do exceed that threshold, we do start to see backwater into our system.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. In fact, I remember seeing a report that Montreal and a lot of the area was flooding along the St. Lawrence because they felt there was an inadequate balance in the context of regulating the water levels in the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence, because for every time they make those adjustments, it has an impact somewhere else. Is that not correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Certainly the entire system is linked, so changes made at one end can have an impact throughout the entire system.
I appreciate that. So I just want to make sure that it's not poor workmanship or poor efforts by the regulators. It's just that it's a real challenge when you have major storm events to balance those issues when you're trying to regulate the water levels because of the domino effect it has. I want to highlight that. The second piece is because I am, and I'm not afraid to put that the amount of fluid that leaked out of a slightly open gate over a 4-year period that went into our system. Have we exceeded that 1 year in the context of our events this year?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about kind of apples and oranges there. So at the main King CSO tank, that is a combined sewer overflow point. This report's talking about bypasses at our wastewater plant. So a slightly different animal, but certainly the volume that we experienced in 2019, I'd have to do some math. But yes, that is a very large volume. I would like to do the math before I comment on that, but yes, it represents a pretty significant volume, probably very comparable.
I might want to save you the time. Yes, it is greater than what was leaked 1 year through that overthrow than what was leaked over 4 years out of a CSO tank. And it's the same basic content. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, very similar content.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Seeing none. 2 questions for me on 5.1, Director Grice. The bypass, can you just maybe elaborate on how that happens and what treatment that the bypass effluent receives on its way out?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chairman. So at the wastewater treatment plant, we do receive flow from all across the entire city. As you're aware, and we just were talking about with Councillor Whitehead, we do have a combined sewer network. So we also have combined sewer tanks scattered throughout our system. We try to direct as much flow as possible to our wastewater treatment plant because at the wastewater facility, we have the ability to do some partial treatment even during a bypass event. So if we see a significant rain event and we are forced to bypass at our facility, that material still goes through initial screening. So it's removing any of the large debris. It also has chemicals added to it to help with phosphorus removal. And then it goes through our primary settling process where a lot of the larger solids as well as the phosphorus a large portion of the phosphorus will be removed from the system before it is discharged to the natural environment. So at our Woodward facility, it receives much higher level of treatment than if it were to overflow at one of our CSO tanks. And that's why we try to push as much product to our plant as possible.
And of course, a bypass of the full treatment process is never a good thing. But I remember speaking to you about this, and I believe you mentioned that what we are bypassing is treated to a higher level than what we would have been fully treating just years ago before the city of Hamilton invested in an improved treatment process at Woodward. Maybe just comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly technology and wastewater treatment has evolved over the years. So yes, our primary equivalent treatment now is certainly quite strong. You look at some of the other municipalities, not necessarily in Ontario, but other places across Canada, they're only required to treat to a primary treatment capacity or primary treatment quality on an ongoing basis. So yes, our primary level of treatment is certainly quite strong. So we would like to put it through our entire process, but certainly bypass is not a good news event, but at least we are still removing a large portion of phosphorus and solids in our system, which I think is a good news story.
Thank you, Director. I do have a question on 5.3, which is the Corporate Security Annual Report. I see Councillor Whitehead in the queue. Was that on this item or a different? Councillor Whitehead?
This item. So, and I thank you, and I thank the chairman for clarifying there's a partial treatment of the overflow that has gone to the lake, which exceeds what was leaked in over 4 years out of a CSO tank. The next question I had, which generated is you have some comparisons in the charts, and I guess the first question: when did we complete, and how many CSO tanks do we have?
So through Mr. Chairman, we have 9 CSO tanks within our system, and I believe the last one was installed in approximately 2012.
Now, is it not true that if you're exceeding capacity, I think you almost lost your wells 1 year, that you have to just bypass completely without treatment?
So through Mr. Chairman, yes, if the rainfall event was so large, there is the possibility that we could bypass our entire treatment process. We do have a bunch of abundant capacity within our wastewater plant. So the last time we have had to initiate a bypass that did not go through any form of treatment was a very long time ago. Any rain event that we've experienced in the last half dozen years has gone through primary level of treatment.
do we have a mechanical problem? Because I remember there was a report that came in and you almost lost one of your pumps with the overflow because of, I don't know, maybe it was a mechanical issue and you had a bypass. That was less than over, maybe within the last 2 years.
So through Mr. Chairman, I think during part of our Woodward upgrade program, we did have a pump down for a very short period of time. We may have had a very small bypass that would still have not been a complete plant bypass, but it would have not received full primary level of treatment, but it was a very small volume. It was only down for a matter of hours.
Fair enough. Now, how long have we had when do we build the CSO tanks and how many do we have? How long have they been in operation?
So through Mr. Chairman, again, we have 9 CSO tanks in our facility. They were constructed anytime from 1965 up until about 2012 when our last facility was brought into operation.
And was there not original proposal for 10 CSO tanks?
So through Mr. Chairman, I'd have to go back and take a look. I'm looking over at Mark because Mark did a lot of our planning, and he's kind of shaking his head that I believe 9 has been our plan all along.
Okay, I remember seeing a report saying 10. So when I worked for Bob Morrow, so I'm not sure, that would have been going back a number of years ago. But they identified 10 CSO tanks to be built. We built 9. We're still having bypass issues. Would additional CSO tank take that pressure off and mean less would be going into the harbor untreated or partially treated?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take a look at our notes and see if, in fact, there was 10 identified a number of years ago. But yes, any additional CSO tanks that we would build would lessen the burden on bypasses. CSO tank is certainly a very significant investment into our system. And currently, through our flooding and drainage program, we're really trying to eliminate as much of our combined sewer network as possible. That's really going to have a better bang for our buck at the end of the day. That's just a relatively long-term initiative.
I appreciate that. I think we want to get the best value for the dollars we spend as well. And I think that's what you're suggesting is maybe we deal with the combined system to a greater degree. You're suggesting we can reap better or larger benefits for the dollar. Is that what you're suggesting?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And Dan just pointed out to me, said I believe our Green Hill facility came on in the 80s and not in the 60s, as I mentioned. My apologies, Councillor.
That's what I thought. I thought it was newer, not less. So the city's made now. How do we compare to our competitors?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with the CSO tanks within all of our comparator municipalities. I would say we certainly have a very active program. So with our 9 tanks, we've invested close to $100 million in the last, I guess, close to 30 years now. So that is certainly a significant investment that our ratepayers and our council has endorsed to improve our effluent quality. But I'd have to do some homework to see what kind of volumes exist within our comparator municipalities.
So I noticed that on these charts, we don't have Burlington, we don't have Oakville, we don't have, and my understanding is that a lot of stuff flows straight to the water. Niagara Falls, you do have. My understanding, we perform today at a much higher level than most of our competitors.
So through Mr. Chairman, in Southern Ontario, many municipalities treat to a very similar level that we do. Certainly other parts of Canada, treatment is maybe not as stringent as we are experiencing here in Ontario, but certainly those comparative municipalities have very similar facilities to that we have here in Hamilton.
So Oakville and Burlington have CSO tanks now?
So Oakville is a relatively new city, through you, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe they have a combined sewer network within their system. That's why they wouldn't be included in this list. But certainly the quality of their wastewater treatment plan is very similar to ours at Woodward.
So they would have partial treatment for bypass on a rain event like ours.
So there, Mr. Chairman, I'd have to look at their stats, but I don't know if they do have any bypasses. Not having a combined system, they don't have that burden of wet weather impacts. So for committing to that, I'd have to look at it, but I suspect they do not have bypasses from their facilities, just given the nature of their separated system.
And the charts you provide us, you show Niagara Falls and I saw numbers around 3,000. Can you just sort of explain? We're at 2,000 of 2019. Is it 2019 in the year? It's hard to pull the report up simultaneously. Can you just give us some context to that report?
Councillor, you're just at your 5 minutes, but please continue.
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, our numbers in 2008, we showed 2018 and 2019. I guess I should apologize that this is kind of late getting to committee this year. So this is relatively old information at this point, but given the COVID pandemic, this was kind of as early as we could get on the Public Works agenda to share this information. But certainly the 2020 bypass numbers will be shared with Council very early in 2021. But in 2018, at our Hamilton facilities, we were just under 2,000 megaliters. And then in 2019, we were at 3,000 megaliters. And as Councillor Nan alluded to earlier on, that significant increase is primarily due to the elevated lake levels that we experienced.
I appreciate it. Niagara, and in that same time frame, Toronto and Niagara, what were their numbers?
So Niagara in 2018 was about 2,700, and 2,000 in 2019, and Toronto 2018 was 2,100 and 4,400 in 2019. So similar to us, Toronto certainly a little bit a larger volume than released in Hamilton, but given the size of their community, I would say fairly comparable.
Well, it also suggests that the same challenges that we were having, they were having during those periods of time, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, absolutely. Typically, if you look at Niagara or Toronto, anyone around here, when there's a significant rain event, it tends to impact most of these communities. So when we have a bypass event, it's not very uncommon for Toronto to have a bypass event at a similar time.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much, Andrew.
I have Councillor Ferguson first time, and then Councillor Nan. Councillor Ferguson? She's second time. Councillor Ferguson? Oh, not disappeared. Okay. We'll go to Councillor Nan. And...
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
You
see me now? Everything cool?
Yeah, now I can see you. There we go.
Okay. So my question is about the security report, and question to Martin. Martin, I think you're on. I saw you online earlier, so I think you're there. My question to you is, we had a lot of protests going on in front of City Hall some time ago when the Yellow Vesters were pretty active in our community. Have we seen a marked drop in the protesters in front of City Hall in the last few months?
Hello, this is Martin Dambo, Corporate Security Specialist. Through the chair to the councillor, thank you for your question. We have seen a remarkable drop in the number of activities that have occurred in the City Hall forecourt since January 1st, and I likely contribute that to the physical distancing measures that have been imposed through the province as well as through the city.
Okay, and back when we were having all these protests, there was concern about the quality of the images from our cameras. Have they been upgraded now?
Through the chair, yes, sir, they have been upgraded. The completion of that project occurred in January, and they have been utilized by investigative authorities for a number of different matters already.
Perfect. Okay, that's all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nan.
Thank you through the chair. Also on 5.3, the security report. Martin, the top sheet as well as the appendix both refer to the enhancements to our security program vis-a-vis, I think the reference in the document says protests and gatherings outside of City Hall in the forecourt. And it was my understanding that we approved those enhancements through our hate mitigation policy and the system-wide, citywide hate mitigation portfolio of work that we did. And there was a lot of very careful conversations about ensuring that these were not measures that are necessarily trying to deter democratic protests, but more specifically around issues of safety and security as it related to the kind of hate-based activity that some of those who are choosing to occupy the forecourt were engaging in, and the fallout from that activity. So I just was curious on that in terms of making sure that there's consistency and linkage between the approvals from council and the framework in there. So if I could get a comment to that, please.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Nan, for your question. Yes, the objective of all the measures that are implied for safety and security in the forecourt are to ensure that all peaceful individuals are able to enjoy that space for what it's intended to be, whether that is through activities that are sponsored in part by the city for public engagement, or those that are activated by individuals in the community who are there for demonstrations.
So it's in the demonstrations terminology that we're seeing the hate-based or hate mitigation. I just want to be really clear that this council approved security enhancements in the portfolio and the framework of hate mitigation. And I don't see that consistency in the security report. And it might be, maybe I'm getting too much into the semantics there, but I think it's good for public documentation to ensure that those decision points are well documented in terms of the enhancements and the ongoing work that our security staff are doing in terms of supporting that kind of security and safety in the face of hate-based activity in our city properties. So moving forward, I guess my request is if we could ensure that those policy decisions that lead to that enhancement being approved, that they're documented in the report as well. And with that, thanks to the security team for your ongoing support and ensuring that the public can enjoy our city spaces with much more sense of safety and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, so when I talk about the security, I also concerned about security, whether it's the police or our own security. I attended an anti-hate a rally in front of City Hall, and let's be clear, it was about anti-hate. And I seen participants completely fully clothed, masked. This is pre-COVID, going up to police officers, making insults and snapping pictures right in their face. And these were anti-hate protesters. So are we going to create a code of some kind in the context of the respect for the security as opposed to putting them at risk?
Through the chair, I would probably yield that response to Hamilton Police with how they deal with their own policies.
How about our own security?
Through the chair, corporate security does not necessarily see a need to establish a policy related to that perspective. We deal holistically with all of the individuals that are on the property there to enjoy the space peacefully. And then if there are individuals who are engaging in criminal or harassing behavior, that we would definitely engage Hamilton Police for them to respond.
Perfect. And we will document those individuals at the time that they're harassing our security?
Through the chair, we document all activities that take place where there's an interaction with an individual.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers on this item? Not seeing any. So this was moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Pauls. All the consent items 5.1 through to 5.3. And we're going to go to a vote. All in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimously. To staff presentations, I'd like to call upon Director Andrew Grice of Hamilton Water to introduce the presenter. Director Grice.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Grice here, Director of Hamilton Water. Just as Deborah loads her presentation, I just wanted to introduce her to committee. Deborah started with our team in late 2019, and given kind of the COVID pandemic and our modified working arrangement, she has likely not had much interaction with council yet to date. So Deborah comes to us from Oxford County. She's held various management level positions within their water department, so she brings a real diverse background to our team here, which is great news. And she also works on a lot of the water and wastewater boards and helps bring a stronger voice for Hamilton to those communities and organizations as well. So certainly a great asset for us. And with that, I will kick it over to Deborah to walk through her presentation.
Yeah, I think, yes, it's, okay, there we go. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me. So through the chair, good morning and thank you for the opportunity to present the Clean Harbor Outreach Program to committee today. And I think this ties in nicely with earlier discussions we had on a previous Public Works report. So just a bit of history context. In June 2016, Council directed staff to undertake a study to determine where floatable waste in the harbor was coming from and to provide recommendations for reducing it. Further, Council also approved the development of an outreach program to raise awareness about the city's combined sewer system, its impact on our harbor, and to educate residents on the role in this issue. One of the impetuses for this direction was really the Indigenous water walkers who in 2015 had protested the presence of floatable waste in Hamilton Harbor. So Hamilton's Clean Water Program is working to improve water quality and to restore harbor ecology. It's really an overarching program that encompasses many different projects, both past and present, that are individually contributing to the restoration of Hamilton water. Examples of this include the Randall Reef Remediation Project, our Cross-Connection Control Program, and the $340 million project to upgrade the Woodward Wastewater Treatment Plant. And as part of the outreach initiative, a home for all things Clean Harbor have been created on the city's website, and it includes updates on projects, videos, interactive maps, and a history of all of the work. Its purpose is really to allow residents to become informed of the work that is being done to improve the harbor. Additionally, some of our larger projects, such as the Woodward upgrades, has had additional direct communication and interaction with the surrounding neighbors and other interested residents and stakeholders. So the floatable study that was directed by Council was finalized early this year, and it included a baseline assessment of our current practices and procedures, valuation of the sewer system, identification of best practices around the world, really to reduce the discharge and accumulation of floatable materials, and also field inspections of the system. The report included a number of both technical and non-technical recommendations, and I'll expand on these in the next following slides. So starting with the non-technical actions, improving the signage at our CSO locations. So in the top left, you'll see an example of a new sign that's been installed at the James Street CSO. And historically, there has been signage at some of the outfalls, but not everywhere. And the information that was included on it was not necessarily consistent, didn't have public health information, and didn't have city contact information. So earlier this year, we completed the installation of signage at all of our CSO outfall locations. And we're also in the process of installing a broader public education sign that will be located in Bayfield Park, and that will be going in the next, Bayfront Park. That will be going in the next couple of weeks. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see the Public Works and Public Health and departments initiatives to install community sharp bins at 8 downtown parks. 7 of these were installed before the end of 2019, and the 8th is awaiting the park reconstruction. So the goals of these containers are to provide a safe location to dispose of sharps and needle disposal, and preventing them from being disposed of, dropped down catch basins or into storm drains, or put in garbage bins, or just left in the park. So public health will be evaluating the success of these bins over the coming year. Further, the consultant also recommended the continued support of a number of educational and awareness programs that the city already supports, including the Yellowfish Road program, as shown on the bottom left of the screen, the Team Up to Clean Up, as well as a recommendation to develop an outreach campaign that explains to residents the city's combined sewer system and the impact that non-flushable waste has on public infrastructure and on the environment. Moving over to the technical recommended actions, there was a number of them around inspections and documentation. And these included formalization of periodic and post-event inspections of the CSO outfalls to monitor conditions. And within the CSO tanks, it also improvements to our inspections of our floatable control features such as baffles, and also improved logging of our post-event tank washes. There are a number of recommendations around booms, and so the city is now moving forward with an enhanced boom program, and which will include 4 new seasonal booms at the Birch, Plymouth, Ottawa, and Dunn CSO locations. And this is on a pilot basis to assess their feasibility and viability. In addition to these 4, where it also recommended enhancing procedures and reporting processes at the existing boom locations. And these processes will include enhanced inspection procedures, improved documentation reporting, and cleaning requirements for the booms, shoreline, and the outfall as required. So this program is in development as we speak, and booms are being installed this year. So through this study, it really became evident that much of the floatable waste that we're seeing in the harbor is being generated within the bathroom. And so following council's direction, staff implemented a community outreach program with the goal of educating residents that the actions in their bathrooms have a direct impact on the health of the harbor. And we termed this the Own Your Throne. So the messaging was really meant to be simple and positive, not just a list of don'ts, and needed to include a personal investment, why should I care component. So after fine tuning and developing the tactics, the city launched this in November 2018. There are 4 key messages throughout the program, and they centered around only the 3 Ps are safe to flush, so pee, poo, and toilet paper. Flushing anything else can damage the harbor and the shoreline, damage your home and cost you money in repairs, and requires the city to spend time and money repairing infrastructure. So the campaign was divided into 3 phases, and each had their own key messages. The first phase, which is shown on the left of the screen, focused on the introduction to the Own Your Throne concept, or the 3 Ps, and introduced our hero characters. The top image shows the phase 2, which was the more specific technical issues and addressed one of the biggest culprits that we see in the wastewater sector, which is wipes. We showed the correct action in our messaging, including that wipes belong in the trash can, not in the toilet, even if they say they're flushable. And then again, reiterated the 3P message. And then at the bottom, the most technical components for phase 3 was all about the why not. So this messaging showed how floatables can end up in the environment, cause backup in both public infrastructure and private plumbing. It also explained how Hamilton's combined sewer system works. And this phase was intended to provide the answer to the why should I care question. Over the course of the campaign, staff put a lot of emphasis in connecting directly with the community. Since the launch, staff have attended numerous events, connecting one-on-one with residents and also in schools to continue to spread the message. So did it work is the answer. So to assess the effects, we did a pre and post survey and was pushed to the city's Twitter account asking residents about their bathroom behaviors. The survey helped to determine if residents were aware of the messaging and changing their behaviors. So the conclusion, yeah, it was a success. The goals we were hoping to achieve were an increase in awareness, personal acceptance, and positive behaviors. Don't just take our word for it. The success of the campaign was recognized across Canada and internationally and won 2 prestigious awards. So it was the Own Your Throne campaign, formally recognized by both the International Association of Business Communicators and the Hermes Creative Awards. So the Hermes Creative Awards honors messages and creators of traditional and emerging media, and we won a gold award for communications and marketing campaign category, and the IABC, which is quite prestigious, I'm told. We won a Golden Quill Award of Merit in the government communication programs. But we're not done yet. Staff are already hard at work at the next campaign that's targeted at kitchen behaviors. So the tagline here will be cool, wipe, and toss. Your fats, oils, and greases belong in the green bin or garbage. Our pipes flowing. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Great job, Deborah. Questions on the presentation? Councillor Whitehead.
And it's certainly an indication of our innovation and creative approach to solving problems. The couple questions I have is one, there's a number of reports and studies on social media and in the context of the population, and basically they all consistent 10% of the population. So it's nice that you went through Twitter, but my understanding is only 10% of the population you're reaching. So I didn't hear how you're reaching to the balance of the population in Hamilton on this issue.
Certainly, through the chair, the Twitter was the main platform for the survey, and yes, we recognize that that's hitting just a segment of the society, but the campaign initiatives actually focused on traditional media, so ads in newspapers, radios, posters in bathroom stalls, even on campuses. So there was both a mix of traditional and emerging media used for this campaign.
I appreciate it, because I would suggest that probably on Twitter in Hamilton, anyway, in my experience, you probably have a lot of like-minded individuals that are very conscientious on these issues, and you're speaking to the choir. It's the people that aren't part of the choir that we need to speak to, and that's primarily my point about Twitter. The second piece is, although you did touch it, but very briefly in the kitchen. But it's not just grease and stuff that goes down the sink. The toilet isn't the only access to our system. It is our bathroom sinks, our kitchen sinks. For example, medications. Medications are dumped at a pretty significant rate, and I saw a report that there is concerns about the impacts on our aquatic system within our Great Lakes. What are we doing on that front?
Thank you, through the chair. I certainly the disposal of personal care products and medication is a worry for all municipalities that discharge particularly into the Great Lakes. And I know that there is a lot of research being done at a number of Canadian universities on this topic, and it is quite challenging. I am looking across the way to Mr. Grice, hoping that he might be able to provide some additional comments on what Hamilton specifically is doing that, because unfortunately I don't quite have the history.
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, Deborah is correct. Sorry, can you mute Deb? I'm getting
feedback.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Deborah is correct. Certainly pharmaceuticals are a challenge for all municipalities to have a wastewater system. So part of our collaboration with agencies like the Canadian Water Network, they've initiated a number of studies on pharmaceuticals and wastewater. So we're certainly very active participants there, but it is something that is really an emerging trend for us. So I don't have a lot of information I can share it with you right now. It is certainly on our radar and something that we are continuing to look at. So yes, the new program is focused focused on kind of the fats, oils, and greases, but that's certainly not to say that pharmaceuticals are not an issue within our system, and they certainly will be addressed and tackled. They're not part of the messaging associated with our upcoming campaign.
So I'm concerned about how we prioritize, because when you talk to environmentalists and you talk to fisheries and you talk to different, we are actually impacting the ability for our aquatics to reproduce as a result of the pharmaceuticals in our Great Lakes system. There's lots of studies and reports that are saying this is not just an emerging issue; it's quickly becoming an acute, chronic issue within our Great Lakes system. So we're concentrating on Greece. Meanwhile, we aren't putting the same focus and priority on pharmaceuticals, and yet the rising studies are saying that is becoming a very serious issue in the context of the well-being of our Great Lakes and its aquatics.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly happy to take that away and look at our messaging and see if we can include some of the pharmaceutical elements. Certainly from a testing perspective, I know that can be very expensive. The detection limits on pharmaceuticals from a technical perspective can be very difficult to measure and a significant capital investment, but certainly adding messaging into our programs to make people more aware of their behaviors and the proper disposal methods of their pharmaceuticals, that should be relatively simple and something that I'm sure Deborah and her team would be happy to look at.
I think I really appreciate that, because when you see double-headed fish and all the different impacts the pharmaceuticals are having on, again, the aquatics, I don't think it's going to be tough to have a strong educational program about what the pharmaceuticals are doing to the aquatics within our Great Lakes system. It could be pretty harsh because there's pretty ugly things happening out there in the context of the impacts, and I think it's time that we tell the story and hit people with it straight on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers on the presentation? Seeing none, need a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Nan. All in favor? Thank you.
So I'm missing Councillor Jackson. He's there. Wanna?
Councillor Jackson?
Thumb? Can you see my thumb?
No, you need to hold it up a bit higher. There we go. Thank you.
We're good.
Good, okay. And then report, I need a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? Unless there's any discussion on the actual. Not seeing any, so we'll vote on receiving 7.1.
Wait.
So. So I'm just waiting on Jackson and Vanderbeek.
Are you able to vote in e-scribe, or you just want to give me a thumbs up?
You'll have to identify them.
Councillor Jackson, thumbs up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thumbs up, but for these last two votes, for some reason electronically, I've lost my e-scribe vote, just letting you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe try refreshing the screen and hopefully it'll come back. And then Councillor Vanderbeek?
Oh, she's good.
Oh, you're good. All right, we got it. Thank you. That passes unanimously. To discussion items, 8.1 is the cosmetic pesticide ban. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendation in the report and get it on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Any discussion on 8.1? Councillor Ferguson?
Sorry. Oh.
Sorry, Just trying to unmute you there. You're unmuted on our end. Can't hear you though. Councillor Ferguson, can you just check your headset? We can't hear you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. A question, if I can, to staff, and I'll start with Craig Murdoch, if Craig is online today. So, are you there, Craig?
Through the chair, yes. Councillor Ferguson, Craig Murdoch, Director of Environmental Services.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. So, Craig, during the winter, when they brought in the pesticide ban, we had a lot of debate at council on this matter and how being permitted to use an integrated pest management process, that we were losing our parks rapidly and cemeteries. One report I recall that the park staff felt that we'd lost about 50% of the parks to weeds and the grass is being smothered out. And we put through at least one, if not 2 or 3 resolutions of the province asking to give municipalities the authority in our parks and cemeteries to use cosmetic pesticides so that we could maintain them. Reading this report today, it looks like staff have turned 180 degrees on this, and you're actually recommending that we not take advantage of the change in legislation, which allows cosmetic pesticides to be used on our cemeteries. I believe the Catholic Board is in fact doing this. And so my question to you, Craig, is why has staff changed their view on trying to keep our parks parks aren't approved now, but our cemeteries maintained?
Through you, Mr. Chair, what we're recommending in this report is that we don't change our practice on cemeteries. What you remember from reports that we had in the past for our integrated pest management recommendations was for sports fields specifically. So that wasn't parkland in general, it was sports fields specifically. So we changed our practices and we do a lot more horticultural and turf management practices to try to keep weeds at a minimum in our sports fields.
Okay, so we have the opportunity to do this in our cemeteries. What percentage have you got a feel for our cemeteries? What percentage of our cemeteries turf has been had the grass smothered out by weed infestation?
Through the chair, no, we don't have specific information on that. It would also depend on each site because some sites get higher frequency of grass cutting, like our premier or active cemeteries versus our closed cemeteries or our rural cemeteries. So the weeds that we see in our cemeteries, it's just aesthetic. There's not a health and safety issue relating to aesthetic weeds. In the sports fields, our concern was safety because people can twist an ankle if we had certain weeds in place. But in the cemeteries, it's purely aesthetic.
Okay, and I don't disagree with what you're recommending. I just suspect that we have a duty as a keepers of our cemeteries to keep the turf respectful for not only the deceased but their families who visit regularly. And so I'm just a little bit concerned we didn't put the I don't want to say effort, but we didn't put the review into that kind of detail to maybe have a survey done of the families that are interned in our cemeteries. I know to go back to spraying or even using an integrated pest management system would be controversial in our community. I understand that. But I just wondered why we changed our view, and I think you've made that clear. It was turf, it was our playing fields that you were looking to get some relief and the use of a integrated pest management. So thank you for your time.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I would also just like to add to what you had said, Councillor. In 2007, Council had decided that we were not going to be spraying pesticides on cemeteries because of feedback that we had received from the public at that time. And then in 2009, the province brought in the Pesticide Act and to allow consistency across the province. So council did have this discussion in 2007. However, we can always open that discussion up again if there was the will of council to do so. However, we haven't had a lot of complaints in the last few years. It seems that the public now understands the reason and the benefits environmentally to not using pesticides in cemeteries.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Golf courses are continue to be exempted?
Through the chair, yes, that is my understanding.
Agricultural community continue to be exempted?
Yes.
Well, so it sounds like we're trying to put a finger in a dam and there's holes everywhere. So I'm trying to understand what we're actually accomplishing. How have we, I mean, I go to St. Thomas More soccer field and there's broadband weeds everywhere. There's more of that than grass. So help me understand what actual program we have in place. St. Thomas More School, so that's William Connell Park, or Swinger, so William Swinger Park.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to refer that to Kara Bunn, the manager of Parks and Cemeteries, to answer any questions we have on maintaining our sports fields.
Thank you.
I see you there, Kara.
Through the chair, Kara Bunn, manager of Parks and Cemeteries. Yes, we've been trying to do a lot more cultural practices. So we're looking at things such as overseeding, making sure we're aerating, reducing the level of play. So the extra play and the compaction can cause more weeds. And so this year we've had a really great year with things being shut down. A lot of our fields are being able to be brought back to a better condition by overseeding a lot and fertilizing and making sure that the turf is really healthy. We're starting to see some differences right now in combating some of the weeds that previously had tried to outcompete.
Okay, but that you're taking a unique situation of COVID and applying it to something that isn't real. You know, when COVID is gone and our parks are being utilized, my observation very clearly, because I can step outside the door and show you a picture, there's more weeds than there's grass. So I was told that especially broadweeds, are actually a slip hazard in the context of our sports and could create liability. So again, the question is, we've had a number of years experience with these integrated practices. Are they working? Are we succeeding? I can give you an example where it appears that it's not, but there might be a reason for it.
I would say that through the chair, I would say that in some of our premier areas where we can do extra, yes, it is working. In some of the other fields where we aren't, like you said, when we don't have COVID, we do still struggle. It's going to be an ongoing battle. We have previously put forward capital requests to ensure that we have more staff, more resources, more equipment to do this, but at this point it hasn't met the budget. So, you know, we'll continue to make that ask, and if council supports that, we can certainly do more in more parks. But at this point, it's our A-class fields that really get that level of extra attention.
So what is William Swinger, that major investment, major soccer pitch right next to a major high school? What is that classified as?
I believe that should be an A-class field. I think it's staffed, so it should be getting extra attention, yes.
Okay, so I want to draw attention to that. Second piece is, right now during COVID, my understanding, we're only putting 2 people in a vehicle. You know, traditionally we put 4. So it's really impacted our ability to meet those standards. Is that impacted to some degree what you hope to achieve this year with our sports fields?
It hasn't impacted, through the chair, it hasn't impacted our sports fields so much. It's more the trimming, the trim work. So our wide area mowers and all of our operators are still actively working. It's the trimming and the aesthetics around the edges that is suffering this year.
I appreciate that. And I want to make it clear to all those residents that have been writing me about the high grass and the lack of trimming. That's not the lack of us wanting to get to it, but it's the COVID and some of the capacity issues we have as a result of COVID that's interfered with the high level of service we and the community has traditionally come to enjoy. I just want to make that clear to any listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers on 8.1? I'm not seeing any. So this was moved by Pearson and Pauls, I believe, if I remember correctly. So we're going to go to electronic vote, of course. Thank you. That passes unanimously. 8.2, the standardization of Hamilton water equipment, parts and supplies. Need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Any discussion on 8.2? I'm not seeing any. No, nobody's in the queue. Okay. So electronic vote, all in favor. Thank you. It passes unanimously. 8.3 is water treatment plant clear well improvement. Mover and seconder to put on the floor. Moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Any discussion on 8.3? Not seeing any. I do have a question for Director Grice if he's there. We're identifying the funding source for this, and I was wondering if he's confirmed that.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, I have Mark Bainbridge here as well, who can help answer questions if required. So I believe we talked about the project ID there. So that is just the approved project account for the waste or for the water treatment plant upgrade. So there is sufficient budget within that account to accommodate this, and that is the funding source that we are using for this this request.
So and maybe you can just give a brief explanation of this work, because this is related to the water ban that was on earlier in the season. So I think it's important that the public knows that we're taking action on that and why.
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm actually going to allow Mark to speak. I know Mark and his team worked very hard on this, so I'll certainly allow him the opportunity to answer that question. And if he needs any support, I'll certainly here to help him.
Thank you, and good morning. It's Mark Bainbridge, the Director of Planning and Capital for Hamilton Water. So earlier this year, we did encounter some unexpected repairs that were needed in the clear wells of the water treatment plant, which caused that piece of the facility to be out of service. With the increasing demands of the community in response to the dry climate, we were getting concerned about the water production process and discovered that the facility is not able to produce water from half of the plant. There's two clear wells. Half of the plant feeds through one clear well, the other half of the plant feeds through the other clear well, and there's no interconnection between the two. So as that facility gets older and we encounter more need to provide or engage infrastructure repairs, those risks go up that certain units are going to be out of service, and if demands are going up, we want to have that flexibility. So this capital works is intended to provide a new channel that will allow either half of the water treatment plant to feed water through either one of the clear wells, thereby allowing us to maximize production at any given time and keep up with demands.
Councillor? So I think we... Oh, that was my question. Need more coffee. Thank you, Mark. On the speakers list, we have Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, just a quick question. When's the last time, or have we, this sounds like it's in the same vein. When I worked at the mines, we had 2 to 3 different redundancies, one for breakdown, two for maintenance. And in fact, I remember we had 2 pumps out, but we had the last and remaining pump up and running that allowed the plant to continue operating. So when's the last time we've done a complete sweep of our current redundancies based on peak needs?
So through the chair, we've evaluated the water treatment plant in the past, but this particular situation is related to major unit processes. So we do have large capacity at the water treatment plant in aggregate, but we only have 2 clear wells, and they are in the position that is in line with the feeds to the community. So both clear wells need to be in place and functional for delivery of water from both sides of the plant. So they are not truly redundant, and this project will allow us to implement that new channel to allow that cross feed and provide what I would call complete redundancy. Right now we have redundancy built into the facility, but only when both of those clear wells are in service.
So my understanding through the report is that it's not the clear wells as much as the filtration system and how it feeds the filtration system. So by putting this bypass in, you can divert the water from the unusable clear well to the other clear water to again get filtered to the filtration system. So here's the question: what is the chances of having a catastrophic breakdown where both clear waters are out of operation? What then?
So I think the risks are pretty low that both of them are going to be out of service at the same time. And just a quick correction there: the filters are upstream of the clear wells, not downstream of the clear wells. So our filter bays are producing water, and they need to. That water needs to flow through either one of those clear well devices. When one of them's out of service, it basically automatically takes out half of our filtration capacity at the same time. So this project is going to be built in order to allow the entire filtration process to feed water through either one of the clear wells. And we wouldn't expect that both clear wells would be down at the same time, certainly not by design or by intent. But at any given time, we might need one of them out of service in the future.
So we have, I mean, I was at City Hall when we had one of our earthquakes, and it's been identified a major, what do you call it? There is a major fault that runs through Lake Ontario and actually can impact Hamilton very significantly with the escarpment. And you know, when you look at LA, they got complete different building standards in respect to potential earthquakes. So what is our building standards in the context of the wells if in fact we have such an event?
Through the chair, I don't think we've assessed that specific scenario in terms of a major catastrophic event. We would have to take that back and see what kind of earthquake pressures our physical structures would be able to take in the future should they occur. But keep in mind that the clear wells themselves are surrounded by other infrastructure. The whole facility is co-located on the same property, and any major infrastructure, or sorry, any major earthquake that hits would hit all of that infrastructure likely at the same time.
That's fair, but I hope that water is one of our basic needs, and that consideration is there. Because you were saying at City Hall, and I don't know where else you could be standing, and feel the whole building moving, and then see subsequent reports come out and indicate that we are in a fault area, then it would be concerning that we're not at least taking that. We're taking environmental impacts in consideration in regards to moving forward and not making it worse. You would think that we would start taking a look at what our risks are in the context of build on essential infrastructure when we know that, and it's not a secret that there's a fault that runs through Lake Ontario that may impact our infrastructure. And the last thing you want to do is build an infrastructure that is vulnerable, so vulnerable that it puts many people at risk. So I want to highlight that because I hope that isn't lost in the future conversations. Thank you.
Through the chair, I would point out that we do risk assessments, and we have had discussions surrounding those types of catastrophic events and what the contingency plans we have at our disposal would be put in place. But there really hasn't been anything that would have changed the infrastructure or modified infrastructure to increase its resilience to earthquake situations.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mark, for the information. Some of my questions have been answered, but just a question about the second well. So what would that give us as increase in capacity? What does each well hold?
Through the chair, that's a good question. I think we're split 18 megaliters, something like that, on site for storage. I don't know the exact capacity of each well, Councillor, but they're roughly the same size, and I think it's around 18 or 20 million liters of storage on that site. But I'd have to check the actual details of how that's split and what the capacity of each cell is.
I wouldn't mind knowing that. If you could disseminate that to the committee members, I'd really appreciate it. And you were commenting there in the previous speaker's questions that so by creating the connection between the two wells, that you can also shut one off at any given time if that's necessary. So there'd be a gate or something.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor. And what it does is it allows us to feed water from either side of the plant. So this is really about if one clear well's down today, half of the treatment plant also by default is down because it relies on that one clear well. So this new project will allow us to keep all of the filter capacity running and force it all through one cell instead of getting reduced to half of our filtration capacity like it is today.
And it would also create efficiencies for any repairs or work that has to be done because you can contain one side or the other, correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. And I would really like to have the information because if this were the situation and when we had the water ban, this would have reduced that situation, correct? If both wells were full.
Through the chair, that's correct. We would have had a greater capacity of production, and we could have produced that water and got it to the community more effectively with this project had it been in place for 2020. Our current plan right now is to do this project and target 2021 for it to be into service.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No further speakers on this item. So we'll go to approval of the report, moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All in favor. Councillor Marula, we need your vote. Got it. And Councillor Pauls is left the building. All right, we're good. Thank you. That carries unanimously. On 8.4 is the Transportation Canada Rail Safety Improvement Program. I need a mover and seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Nan. Any discussion on 8.4? Councillor Pearson. Sorry, you're still muted there, Councillor.
Sorry.
There we go.
Sorry, thank you for that. Yes, I just see, and it is good news. Pleased to see the amount of work that CN is endeavoring, or Transport Canada, for the rail lines. I don't know if it's part of their project, but I do want to mention, and if staff is there with regards to this, that there's been a number of rail crossings in Ward 10 that have been reconstructed or repaired. So I can say, I believe it's the McNeely Road, the Millen Road, and Grays Road. And I can tell you that with the increased amount of residential development on the north side of the QEW and everyone having to cross these rail lines, it's been much appreciated. So I know it's not easy working with the rail companies, et cetera. So it's good to see work being done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? I'm not seeing any. So on 8.4, sorry, I completely forgot my mover and seconder. I've been doing this all morning. Pearson and Nan, thank you. All in favor. have to write these down or Alicia's going to come over and slap my hand. And Councillor Whitehead? Got everybody. Great. Thank you. That passes unanimously. 8.5, DARTS 2019 variance funding. I need a mover and a seconder to put this on the floor. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. Down. Any discussion on the variance funding for DARTS? Councillor Ferguson? I figured you might have something to say about this, Councillor.
Well, yeah, it's sort of deja vu again. I think this is the third or fourth year where we've seen DARTS go significantly off budget, and we're only halfway through. Last year at budget time, the Audit Finance Administration Committee passed a resolution to direct the Auditor General for the city to do an audit of the eligibility for people who are using it. The problem seems to be year over year a significant spike in the number of users. And I'm not sure the status of that audit and where it is. So I don't know whether clerks will require a resolution or just give direction to ask the Auditor General to give an information report at the next Public Works Committee, since our committee is the one that has to fund it, the DARTS, an information report on the status of the audit that's going on for eligibility for DARTS. So I look for direction from either you, Mr. Chairman, or the clerk on whether you need a motion or whether they can just take that as direction.
Well, the Director of Transit is in the meeting, so perhaps she can.
Okay, so Debbie's here. That's great.
Now, yeah.
Hello, Debbie Delvado, Director of Transit. Charles Brown is also online. He might be able to provide a bit of an update specifically around where he is with the eligibility audit.
Charles, are you available?
I see him.
Yes, through the chair. Be happy to answer that question. So we have started the ATS eligibility audit. We got that going before COVID. But we had to delay that in the middle of the audit. We had to delay it because of COVID. We had certain members of our staff redeployed, for example. We did accomplish some things. We're set to restart that audit next week, and we contemplate completing the audit by the end of September, or at least having a draft report by the end of September on ATS eligibility. So expect to bring that to committee in October.
Okay, that'd come to AFNA then, would it, Charles, or would it come to Public Works?
That would come to AFNA, yeah.
Okay, because I think you can see in the recommendation, staff are looking for another $795,000 to fund DARTS for this year. But once again, you know, we saw a 22% increase last year in the funding for DARTS, and you know, we grandfathered all the people who were eligible, and I know I get a lot of emails still from different individuals thinking that there's people taking it that shouldn't be, and I know it's a sensitive topic. That's why we turned it over to an expert like you to give a independent review. So I appreciate you being on the line today. I appreciate you telling me that you should have a report back over, because we're going to very shortly, another 6 months, get into budget deliberations, and I'm sure this will be a high item again. So thanks for the information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just not sure if DARTS, yes. I think Councillor Ferguson nailed it. I think the answer is there. I mean, the reality is it's not the inefficiency of the operation, it's the demand for the service, and the fact that there is very little threshold, I understand, maybe staff can help clarify it, based on human rights in regard to denying services. Is that correct?
So through the chair, councillor is correct. We do have to be compliant with the requirements of AODA. We cannot deny rides, and we have a requirement to provide the same level of service that we do for our conventional service. So yes.
Now, my understanding is, in recent conversations, that we provide an additional service of taxi script, which is not ADA prescribed. So why are we doing this?
So through the chair, so TaxiScript has been around for quite some time, and I was not the director at the time when it came to be, but my understanding is that was an additional service that we provided during the times when before we were 100% accessible on our conventional fleet, and we had limited capacity with our DARTS provider. So it was an additional service that we were providing in order to accommodate customers to be able to access transit.
So it is an enhancement.
So through the chair, we could classify that as an enhancement, but certainly not legislated through AODA.
And comparables. Do we have other communities across Ontario that provide both the paratransit system and the taxi script as we do?
Through the chair, yes. So within the GTHA, there are a couple of other municipalities that continue to offer TaxiScript. There were also a number that had that as well and have discontinued that that service within their municipality.
And how much is that particular service costing on an annualized basis?
So through the chair, I don't have that number available to me today, but I'm happy to get that information back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. And I think I'm only asking, not suggesting I would support eliminating it, but we are looking and understanding that the fiscal challenges we have and the capacity issues that clearly is going to be a challenge moving forward. And if there is a place that we can consider savings, then this would be a place at least to have a conversation. So I would hope we can see that come back in a future report. And thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'm not seeing anybody in the queue. So moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All in favor on item 8.5. Councillor Ferguson, are you able to vote? I don't think you're hearing me because you're on a call. We're going to mark Councillor Ferguson as absent for this. Okay. And Councillor Paul is also absent. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving to motions. 9.1 is the replacement of play structure at Parkdale Park, 1770 Main Street East in Ward 4. Councillor Marula, please introduce your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's moved myself, and it's regarding the replacement of play structure at Parkdale Park. Whereas the play structure located within Parkdale Park at 1770 Main Street East, Hamilton, has reached end of life, and whereas the community amenity is a valuable recreation opportunity for children, youth, and families within the McQuestion West, Glenview, and Normanhurst neighborhoods, therefore be resolved that that the removal of the existing play structure and the design and installation of a new play structure at 1770 Main Street East, Parkdale Park, Hamilton, at an approximate cost of $160,000 be funded from the Ward 4 Area Rating Reserve account be approved, and B, that the General Manager of Public Works or their designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all required agreements and auxiliary documents in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. And just quickly, Mr. Chairman, about 5 years ago, I put together a plan of action that would eliminate all the deficits within parks in Ward 4 East Hamilton. Within that 5 years, though, some of the parks ended up going beyond the life cycle. So now I'm I'm including all of them. So I've got a couple more, I think, coming forward, but by the time I retire, there's going to be zero deficiency. That's my goal. I'm 99.9% there. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And who is your seconder?
And yourself or Councillor Collins?
Happy to second this for you. So on 9.1, all in favor? And Councillor Marula and Councillor.
Yeah, I'm having an issue because I was reading it. I'll give you a thumbs up. I was reading it off the screen and I can't get back to the vote.
All right, we've got a thumbs up from Councillor Marula and a thumbs up from Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, I don't.
Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. On 9.2, the replacement of multi-use courts at 390 Melvin Avenue, Hamilton, McQuestion Farm, St. Helens Walkway in Ward 4. Councillor Marula?
Yes, and it's moved. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's moved by myself and seconded by yourself. The replacement of the multi-use courts at 390 Melvin Avenue, which is within the McQuestion Farm St. Helens Walkway. Whereas the two multi-use courts located at McQuestion Farm St. Helens Walkway at 390 Melvin Avenue have reached end of life and need to be replaced, whereas the community would benefit from having one of the two multi-use courts relocated to the adjacent Hillcrest Park at 8 Heath Street, and whereas these community amenities are valuable recreation opportunities for children, youth, and families within the McQuestion West and McQuestion East neighborhoods, therefore be resolved that the total of two multi-use courts be replaced in the McQuestion neighborhood at 390 Melvin Avenue. And it's all before you there, with the cost being approximately $230,000, and that $198,465.81 be funded from the Ward 4 Area Rating Reserve, and the additional $31,534.19 be funded from the Ward 4 Capital Reinvestment Account, with any unspent funds to be returned to the reserve. And lastly, that the General Manager of Public Works or their designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all required agreements and accelerate documents in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. And my comments that I mentioned regarding Parkdale Park stand for this initiative as well. And I look forward to 100% lack of deficiencies in Ward 4 East Hamilton as it pertains to my parks and facilities accordingly. Thank you.
Great legacy, Councillor. And who's your seconder on that?
Yourself.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson, we had you on the speakers list.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I certainly wanted to just take a moment to commend Councillor Marula, because any of us that sit on council know what it's like to kind of maneuver the dollars that we have in our area rating or in our area budgets, minor maintenance funds. And I know for myself in Ward 10, my goal has been urbanization of all my roads in a certain area since 2003. I have two left from Grays to Fruitland. Now the ward has extended, but I'm trying to keep that visual. So I commend Councillor Marula, and I am certainly starting on the parks in Ward 10 as well. And I just want to say, because residents don't understand, it's a huge task to try and not just have the dollars when you're limited, but also to coordinate with staff and be able to get the works approved and in place in a timely manner. So again, Councillor Marula, congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers on this motion? I'm not seeing any. So moved by Councillor Marula, seconded by myself. All in favor? And Councillor Marula, you're giving us a thumbs up?
Yes, please. Thank you.
There we go. We got everybody? Yep. Okay. That carries unanimously. Thank you. On to 9.3, the low wall at JC Beamer Park at 50 Victoria Avenue North in Ward 3. Councillor Nan, please introduce your motion.
Thank you. Through Chair Danko, I move by myself. I'm looking for a seconder for this one, and it's essentially to repair.
You've got your pick.
Oh, sorry. See, I'm reading off of the thing, and I can't see all my council colleagues who are willing to second. So let me see those ways again. Councillor Pauls, thank you. In terms of the motion that is before you, whereas J.C. Beamer Park is an active neighborhood park in Ward 3 with recreational amenities supporting the community, whereas the former Tweedsmuir Public School is recognized in the park by 3 remaining low bricked walls that act as a gateway as well as seating in J.C. Beamer Park, located at 50 Victoria Avenue North, and whereas the walls have deteriorated and are at the end of their life, and whereas Environmental Services and Tourism Cultural Divisions are not currently funded to complete the estimated $10,500 wall rebuild, therefore be it resolved that the Environmental Services staff be directed to initiate a full rebuild of the 3 low walls to an upset limit of $10,500 to be funded from the Ward 3 Capital Reinvestment Account 330-190-9300, and that be the mayor and the city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form that's satisfactory with the city solicitor. With many thanks to my seconder. The great thing about this is not only does it remain as a bit of a legacy piece in terms of the old Tweedsmuir Public School, but it also functions as seating in the park as well. So, before you, thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on 9.3? I'm not seeing any from committee. Nope. Okay, moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pauls. In favor. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to 9.4, Fiddler's Green Road Sidewalk Extension in Ward 12. Councillor Ferguson, please introduce your motion.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I introduce the motion, I just want to draw to your attention that original estimate done by staff was $65,000. I was recently informed by Edward Soldo that the MTO is now taking issue with the guardrail going across the top of the 403, and they want us to do a study. So I'm going to move the amount up from $65,000 to $80,000 as recommended by Edward. Well, what this involves, Fiddler's Green Road is a major arterial road that crosses over the 403 in Ancaster, and all the children who go to school on the north side of 403 to the elementary school have to cross over the bridge. And there's a sidewalk running up to it, and then there's a sidewalk on the bridge, and then there's a very short piece missing before you get down to near Amberley Boulevard. And so this is to put in place that missing piece. The kids have been using this for years, and the parents are very concerned about the danger of it, and staff agree. So, whereas there's a missing section of sidewalk on Fiddler's Green Road between Highway 403 Bridge and Enmore Avenue, and whereas residents have requested the installation of a sidewalk extension on Fiddler's Green Road from Highway 403 Bridge to Enmore Avenue, Ancaster, to enable walkability and enhance roadway safety. Therefore, be resolved that the Public Works staff be authorized and directed to install a sidewalk extension on Fiddler's Green Road from Highway 403 Bridge to Enmore Avenue in Ancaster in 2020 at a cost of $80,000 to be funded from the Ward 12 Area Rating Reserve account, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and auxiliary documents with such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. So that's my motion. So far, I don't have a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Marula. I saw his hand go up. Any discussion on 9.4? I'm not seeing any. Could I just ask for clarification either from you, Councillor, or from staff? The additional 20,000, I think, is for design work in order to facilitate the capital expense.
I'll let Edward explain it.
Thank you. Director Soldo, if you're there.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Edward Soldo, Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. This work to undertake here, it includes the installation of a sidewalk as well as some work related to guide rail. in speaking with the Ministry of Transportation, because it's within their permit encroachment area. In order for us to get a permit from them, we need to undertake some engineering work, do some calculations related to drainage, have someone sign off on the types of materials that we're going to be using, quite a few different things. So it's about $15,000 that are being added here to hire a consultant to do engineering work that will lead to the capital works being implemented at a future date.
Great. Thank you, Director Soldo and Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm certainly supportive for Councillor Ferguson. I just want to ask a question. So either through Councillor Ferguson or Edward, should this not have been work that should be done by the ministry? Is it not in the ministry's, the province's purview?
Edward, I'll let you take that again.
Thank you to the chairman, to the councillor. This work is actually on our roadway, but we're within the permit area. So while they own the bridge, anything above the bridge, the roadway itself and all the sidewalks are our responsibility.
Okay, I wanted to get clarification on that. Thank you, because I have a number of bridges, especially the Winona and 50 Road bridges now with Costco going in, that I'll be pursuing, certainly when we get funding, sidewalk installations in that area. So thank you for that. And certainly supportive, Mr. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor. So this was moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Marula. I don't see any further speakers on this. All in favor? Councillor Jackson. Just waiting for your vote, Councillor Jackson. I'm seeing the thumbs up. Great, that carries unanimously. Thank you. 9.5, the creation of speed cushion reserve account and installation of speed cushions on Ravenscliff Avenue in 2. Councillor Farr is not present. Is there anybody that would like to move this on his behalf? I saw Councillor Pearson's hand go up and seconded by Councillor Jackson. So any discussion on 9.5? Councillor Pearson? Oh, sorry, I'm going to go to you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Yes,
Yes, so I'm just reading it, and I'm more than happy to move this for Councillor Farr. I just want to confirm, though, through staff, he's saying to create a speed cushion reserve account. Can somebody just explain that to me? Because I'm not sure if this is additional monies. I mean, I'm certainly supportive of the speed cushions to be installed on Ravenscliff that Councillor Farr is asking for. Can somebody just answer what he meant, what was meant by that?
Who's available that's had discussion with Councillor Farr on this?
Thank
Soldo.
Thank you, Director Soldo from Transportation Operations and Maintenance. The purpose of creating that reserve is at the present time, we do not have exact locations of where those speed cushions would go. But through this motion, we would create that funding, and then in the future, once we've determined the exact location, we would utilize it for the implementation of those speed cushions.
And that reserve funding comes from his area rate. Okay, that's fine. More than happy to move it, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Edward.
Thank you. Speakers on this? Is there any? Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah, I haven't heard from Mike Zagaric, but I don't think we can make a reserve account based on the current policies. So my understanding, this is being vetted through finance, and they are okay with us setting up with our area rating separate reserve accounts for every capital program.
Not sure if there's anybody available that can.
I just want to make sure, because I mean, I don't mind setting up, if they want to change the rules and make it that open and open-ended, I'm fine with that.
I think Marcens from purchasing might be on the in the meeting. Is he available?
Because normally you get a costing of the project and then you fund the project. Here we're asked to put money aside and wait till the price comes in. So you're saying a separate reserve. That's not traditionally how we use area rating. So I need to now understand Are the rules changed, and do we have the flexibility to set up a lot of different reserves? Which means then I like the idea of setting up reserves, mind you, but I don't know if it creates some challenges.
So I'm not sure that we have anybody. Oh, there. Oh, sorry, that's Councillor Nan. Is there anybody from staff that can address that?
Well, maybe we could ask Ed, why would we need to set up a reserve? Traditionally, he would go out, identify how many they need, what the cost is, and then Councillor Farr would bring a motion to identify the source of funding and from his account.
Well, Director Soldo, if you're able to answer that.
Thank you, through the chair to Councillor. Through the chair to the councillor, I wasn't involved in these discussions, but my understanding is that the Councillor Farr would like to implement the speed cushions at 3 other locations. They're $6,000 a piece, similar to Part A of the motion. So at 3 different locations, it's $18,000. He doesn't currently have the locations identified, but at a future date. So I believe he's getting pre-approval for spending that money at those 3 locations in the future.
So here's the begs the question then. What is the process? We do all pre-approvals now, or do we do the traditional thing, wait for you to come back with the report with the identified locations and the number of speed cushions and the set prices there, it's paid for. But my concern, I guess the concern would be, if the price comes under what you put in the reserve, then what happens to the balance? There's no direction. So I'm really trying to understand why you would do this in advance, because traditionally, again, we ask traffic to look at a study or look at where the best and most appropriate places to put these speed cushions. You tell us where that is. We work with the community. You identify the number. We get a pricing for it, and then we pay for it. That's the report comes to council, and we pay for it. This is asking for something like this is asking, throw money into account. We'll get back to you without all the details. Correct? So I'm trying to understand what there has to be a rationale for the shift. I don't understand it. Ed, can you help me?
Through the chair to Councillor, again, I wasn't part of these discussions, Councillor, but I believe the only thing missing in what you just described is the actual locations. The funding and the costing has been determined based on 3 locations and a cost of $6,000 per piece. So that's the $18,000.
So
I do see Marcin from purchasing is there, Councillor, if you'd like to perhaps direct your question to him.
Yeah. So one quick clarification for Ed. So if you, so even though he's saying I'm going to fund 3, if you come back and say you only need 2, and that's what the community ended up with, what do you do with the third amount that's in that reserve that you just approved without finalizing the report?
I believe I'll let finance speak to that, but I believe, as in any project, when we get money from a councillor's area rating, any money that is not unused goes back to the councillor's area rating reserve. But I'll let finance speak to.
Marcin? Sorry, I can't hear you. You're muted on our end, Marcin. Okay, now you're not. I'm still not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Marcin Zukowski, and I'm Senior Financial Analyst in Capital Budgets. So Councillor Whitehead is right. The policy has not changed. Any new reserves that are requested should be going in front of council for approval. However, we tried not to have new reserves created just because of the reporting requirements, and I believe creating project numbers where funding comes from reserves is a better solution.
I appreciate that. So in light of the professional recommendation from staff, I am very concerned that we're taking a path that since the inception of the area rating was one that we stayed away from, because again, more accounts you create, more work you create, more accountability, more auditing, more all those issues. So can I suggest that I support the dollars, but I think that until we actually have the final report on the cushions and the locations, it might be premature to be allocating dollars. So that's my comment. I certainly will go with the thrust of council, but you heard the expertise of our staff saying this is probably not the best course of action.
Thank you, Councillor. So we have the motion is on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Pearson?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, and I understand, and I'm only trying to help Councillor Farr moving this forward, and I have no problem with this. My concern is, was this not vetted through staff then? Because I would assume the way it's been written that it's been vetted through staff. We all do that when we have motions coming forward. So can somebody answer that?
Fortunately, Councillor Farr would be able to answer that, but he's not available. I'm not sure, Marcin.
So Marcin, can I ask then a question? Well, if Marcin can answer, can you answer that, Marcin?
I don't recall this reviewing this part, the creation of reserve information.
Okay, so is there a way of amending this motion then that it just puts all the money? It's just we don't have the locations. Is that not the only issue, Edward? I mean, either way, staff are going to take 6 and 18, was it total of 18,000? No, it's a total of 24,000, right? It'll be for speed bumps on Ravenscliff.
Through the chair to the councillor, maybe the wording of B could be revised, similar to number A there, where staff be authorized and directed to install 3 sets of speed cushions, adding a future to the determined location at a total cost not to exceed 18,000 to be funded from the Ward 2 Area Rating Reserve Fund.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I'm more than happy to make that amendment as the mover. Okay, and we'll make sure that Councillor Farr is aware of that that change, but it still gives Councillor Farr everything that he's asking for, and the money is still coming out of his reserve. So I'm good with that, and we can solve the problem with staff and additional accounts. Okay,
Councillor, and that's the exact same thing we did with Councillor Paul's speed cushion motion a couple weeks ago. Clerk,
thank you.
Do we need a vote on that, or can we just take that as a friendly amendment as Councillor Pearson is the mover?
Well, it's good. It's a complete.
Councillor Whitehead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. I would like a vote on the amendment, please, and thank you.
Okay, I'll move the amendment then.
Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead on the amendment.
Hello?
Votes in progress, Councillor.
Yeah, well, actually, I was on the speaker list to ask for some clarification, because this is not an amendment. The original motion asked to accept a reserve. You can't. So if you're not setting up the reserve, you're in conflict of the actual motion. So you have to put a new motion for it. Protocol procedure.
Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the committee be doing delete and replace.
Good. That's good.
So it's a delete of the original motion in its entirety?
And replace.
Mr. Chair, that's correct, and would be replaced with the revised version indicated earlier by Councillor Pearson.
So then we're not voting on amendment, we're just, the original motion can be withdrawn?
Deleted and replaced.
Councillor? So we had the original motion, which was on the floor. 9.5.
Thank you. Sorry, my speaker button is not working. So, Mr. Chairman, if I can, I would just amend it. I don't know if you want me to read it completely, but it would just be, therefore, be it resolved. So we can take off the paragraph above, whereas Ward 2 office would like to establish speed cushion reserve account, that can be removed. And that we just put, therefore, be it resolved that staff be authorized and directed to install 3 sets of speed cushions on Ravenscliffe Avenue in 2020 at a total cost not to exceed $18,000 to be funded from the Ward 2 Area Rating Reserve Fund. We can remove B and we can maintain C. I believe that would simplify it and clear it up. Okay, Councillor?
Madam Clerk, is that
No.
Councillor, please?
Oh. Point of order.
Can we mute him, please?
Point.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, Councillor Pearson's amendment would be acceptable.
Point of order.
Point of order. Go ahead.
Point of order is that he's asking primarily for a setting of a reserve. This is saying that it's coming straight out of account. That's totally contrary to the motion that's being put before us, and therefore it's not an amendment. It's a new motion.
Correct.
Correct. But you're saying it's an amendment.
No. I'm just saying we're taking that off. I'm just changing what's there as a new motion.
It's a new motion.
The clerk is accepting that as an amendment. So we're
as a new motion.
On the
Madam Clerk.
We're going to vote on the amendment.
Madam Clerk.
Just everybody hold on for a second. Okay, so the ruling from clerks is that it's an amendment. We're going to vote on the amendment moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by, I had Councillor Whitehead, but Councillor Marula. All in favor. Okay. Thank you. That passes unanimously. And then the main motion as amended was moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Jackson. All in favor. Thank you. That carries unanimously. 9.6 is Complete Streets Report in Ward 8. Councillor Marula, I'm going to ask that you take over the chair. So
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. So this, I'm just going to read out the whereas, therefore, and then I'll speak to it. So whereas the Vision Zero and Complete Street principles are used in the City of Hamilton to provide a safer environment for all road users, and whereas the Ward 8 office has requested a review of designated neighborhoods with a focus on traffic calming initiatives at problem locations and to provide a guideline for safety enhancements given the road width classification, surrounding land use, proximity to schools, playgrounds, access roads from arterials, on-street parking, and other considerations. And whereas staff do not have the internal resources to provide a comprehensive report of all designated neighborhoods in Ward 8, therefore be it resolved that staff be authorized and directed to retain a consultant to undertake a review of designated Ward 8 neighborhoods with the intent of providing a complete streets report identifying areas of concerns and recommendations to provide a safer environment for all road users based on Vision Zero and Complete Streets principles to be funded from the Ward 8 Area Rating Reserve Fund 108058 to an upset limit of $149,999 as per the purchasing policy for roster assignments, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with the terms and conditions in a form satisfied to the city solicitor. Moved by myself and seconded by yourself, Councillor Marula. Thank you.
Yes.
And just I'll speak to this briefly. This is something that we've been working on for quite a while with staff and with the residents in Ward 8. As everybody's aware, traffic and speeding are probably some of the biggest issues that residents frequently bring to our offices. So the aim here is to go out and do a comprehensive review and engineering design work for traffic control installations throughout the ward. And in particular, this would be looking at things like road configurations, tie-ins to arterial roads, cut-through traffic, school routes, and things like that. And what I'm looking for as a deliverable out of this is engineering design features to be implemented in a future capital project. And if I could just go to Director Soldo, that we've been working closely on this to maybe outline some of the scope of work that's being proposed.
Edward? Is Edward present?
Thank
Oh,
you.
hi, Edward. Yes, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Edward Solda, Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. Further to the councillor's introduction there, the scope of work really is to do the engineering design for future capital improvements in Ward 8. It'll be focused on coming up with a number of traffic calming initiatives that are based on the Vision Zero and Complete Streets initiatives. The intent of the report then was to identify safety enhancements based on a review of the road widths, classifications, surrounding land use, proximity to schools and playgrounds, on-street parking, other considerations related to traffic calming as per industry standards, and then identifying actual locations where we would be undertaking capital work such as bump outs, speed cushions, potential realignment of stop controls, where we might make changes to pavement markings if we install any traffic islands, and doing any sidewalk widenings in the future, and or separated cycling facilities. The process would also include an extensive public engagement through public notification, doing online surveys, having virtual meetings given the fact that we're within the pandemic currently. This would be undertaken by hiring a consultant through the roster assignment that we currently have set up at the city. So that is the scope of work and what we'd be looking to move forward on.
Thank you, Director Soldo. And this
Councillor Danko.
Thank you. This is building on previous work, really good work that Councillor Whitehead has done in some of the areas of Ward 8 with students from Mohawk College. Director Soldo, could you maybe just outline the difference between the work that the professional engineering consultant is going to do versus what might be available from Mohawk College and what's been done in the past?
Edward. Thank you through the chair to the councillor. This work is quite extensive. It's not one location. We're looking at the entire ward, a number of different neighborhoods. It is something that we as staff don't have the resources to do currently. We are quite behind on a couple other capital projects where we may have considered doing this ourselves, but it is an enhanced level of expertise required. In the past, we have utilized the students in Mohawk to do specific capital sort of reviews of general areas. They do that as part of their program through their studies. I believe Councillor Whitehead was at the presentations in 2018. They did quite a bit of good work there. And then Councillor Danko and I actually were at the presentations in 2019 and did a review of the work that they did. So it's much larger in scale. We're looking to hire consultants because we do not, as a city, have the resources to undertake this work.
Councillor Danko.
And just want to reiterate to committee that this work is focused on neighborhoods. So it's going to be the street networks that are within neighborhoods. It's not going to be looking at the main arterial roadways. So there won't be any impacts on adjacent wards or other areas of the city that also use those arterial roadways. Those are subject to other studies. As committee will recall, we just approved a study for Upper James, and that's a specialized study for that road. So this is specifically focused on neighborhoods. As Director Soldo mentioned, this is the engineering design phase of a phased infrastructure build. So my intention is that once the design work comes back, that we're going to proceed with actually the concrete and asphalt infrastructure work, which I'm intending to also fund from the Ward 8 Area Rating Reserve, unless it is also incorporated with our capital infrastructure projects, which is also a possibility. So it kind of augments both work. As Director Saunders mentioned, we've worked with our traffic operations staff quite extensively to come up with this, as well as with purchasing and finance. And it's quite similar to other projects that we've approved. So for example, in Ward 6, we recently did an engineering design review for a signal, and just this meeting, we approved $15,000 as part of the design work for the sidewalk in Ward 12, which was approved unanimously. Finally, just as Director Soldo has indicated, this will go to a roster assignment, and they'll be able to hire a professional engineering firm as they normally do through their already approved procurement process. The only difference is it's being funded from the Ward 8 Area Reserve. So thank you, everybody. I really hope I can count on your support. This is, like I said at the beginning, a really important initiative for the Ward 8 office, for me and for the residents of Ward 8. And I'm really looking forward to this passing and then improving that safety of the residents in the various neighborhoods throughout the ward. So thank you. And
okay, thank you, Councillor Danko. We do have a couple of speakers, and Councillor Whitehead and Pauls. First on the list is Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you. So my question is to the councillor. There was a number of recommendations that came out of the Good Works, and it was celebrated, if I recall, by Public Works, and Ed needs to know that as well, in regards to the comprehensiveness and the thorough of the audit, the traffic audit in the Rolston neighborhood, if many of you recall. And there was a number of recommendations that came out of that particular study. Now the good councillor, and it's laudable, is looking for a broader study to look for more ways to spend the money, which is great. So the question begs, how much of the money has been spent in implementing what was already studied and recommended in the Rolston neighborhood?
Edward, would that be Edward that would answer that?
Yep.
Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of that particular study, I don't have the study in front of me. It was done back a couple of years ago. I would assume that any recommendations would have been vetted by staff, and if something needed to be implemented, we would have at that point. I can speak to the work that was done by the students in 2019 that I attended to. They provided a number of very specific to intersection recommendations, and we looked at them, and we did implement a number of them. But what we're talking about here is a much broader multi-neighborhood study that needs to be undertaken, not just one specific one.
So I guess the point I'm making, though, if you can't get what is already on the plate, why would you look for broader studies if you can't initiate the ones being recommended that's certainly on the books? So, for example, Lime Ridge, one of the recommendations on the Rolston was to narrow, because the capacity was no longer needed on Lime Ridge, and that a permanent bike, possibly even delineated bike lane, could be put on Lime Ridge. Has that been completed and implemented?
Edward?
Through the chair to council, I don't have the specifics of what they recommended at that time frame. If it was referring to cycling, that is something that I'd have to go back and speak with our colleagues in transportation planning in terms of where that is, in terms of overall priorities for cycling infrastructure implementation in the city.
So I guess my point, Mr. Chair, is that it's laudable, but my concern is capacity and not even meeting the required recommendations in the Rolston neighborhood. So if you haven't looked and identified where there's a consensus between traffic and the studies that have already been done, then why are you looking for more studies to look at for new things to invest in, unless you don't agree with the recommendations for the changes in the Rolston neighborhood. So maybe that's a question that needs to go to the councillors, that in the recommendations coming out of the studies for Rolston, how many of those recommendations were implemented? Are you in disagreement with the balance of them?
Edward.
No, that's to the councillor now.
Oh, Councillor Danko.
Thank you. And yeah, there was very good work done by Councillor Whitehead and Mohawk students. In particular in Rolston, the work on the Lime Ridge cycling facility is underway. The design work was done last year. I'm not sure what happened to the construction in terms of COVID, but that's already done. The Rolston neighborhood itself is also scheduled for asset management in the next few years. So part of the challenge has been to figure out what we're going to include with asset management versus what we're going to have to go in and do with area rating funds ourselves. But certainly part of this assignment would be to do a comprehensive review of any, whether it's city or outside studies that have already been completed. We've completed a number of traffic studies and traffic counts throughout the ward in the past year and a half. So all that would be taken into account by the professional engineering consultant. And just going to say, you know, as an engineering student, I designed a 10-story steel building while I was in university. And I would hate for somebody to actually build that and use it because, as Director Soldo has indicated, there's a difference between the level of sophistication and work that you get from a professional consultant that is responsible through the professional engineers of Ontario for their work versus student work. And student work is a great start, but it's certainly, you know, there's reasons why we hire professionals for these kinds of things. Thank you.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. So I think I hear that he is implementing or committed to implementing majority of the recommendations that came out of those studies. I just want to remind Councillor Danko that those studies were actually went through by our engineers, our traffic technologists, to ensure that it adhered to all the best practices and there weren't any issues. So there is a mechanism for that. Here's a question I have for whether it's finance or for Ed. Then if this is the new way of doing our business, is that we could do macro traffic audits on a complete ward for $149,000. If 15 wards all of a sudden say, hey, great, that's a great deal, we're going to pay for it, do we have the capacity?
Edward.
Through the chair to Councillor, that is the holistic approach that Councillor Danko is taking here in terms of reviewing the entire ward is something that we do encourage. We like to look at things on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, but at the present time, we do not have the staffing capacity to undertake that, and hence why we are hiring the consultants.
So if 15 councillors hired 15 consultants coming back with 15 reports and staff have to review it, we have the capacity?
In terms of reviewing through the chair to the councillor, in terms of reviewing the consultant's work, that is something that I think we could look to handle. It is a lot of work for us to come back with 15 different ward studies. That is something we would have to plan over time. We would not be able to handle doing that all at once.
So I guess the reason I'm raising that is because it's about priorities in the context of the capacity we have within our current systems. And my concern is that each ward has priorities, and there's priorities greater than the needs I may have in my own ward based on a more holistic, arterial road, for example, commercial trade corridor. Might be a priority versus something else, or emergency route to the hospital system might be more important than what's actually happening in my ward. So when we talk about things holistically, and that's what I want to look at, and then I'm hearing that you wouldn't have the capacity if we applied this same rule today or across the table for every council hired consultant. Then how's the priority set? How do we manage that?
Okay, I think that's a kind of a redundant question, but Councillor, you've gone beyond the 5 minutes I've allowed a lot of leeway here. I think that's more of a complex question that needs to be dealt with.
It's a real question, Mr. Chair, because if I'm going to now tomorrow or even today amend my motion to reflect $149,000 for a ward wide, and then every other council starts taking the same approach, what does that do in regards to the capacity?
We'll deal with that issue if and when it occurs. I think we're speculating right now that will be happening. I don't believe it is, but if it does, I think it's a good thing, and then it's a problem that we'll need to solve at the correct time. So if you're done, we do have a couple of other speakers. Unless you have one more question, Councillor Wayden.
Well, there's another one on the facilities. Is that part of this one, or is that the one coming up?
I believe it's the one coming up.
Okay, I'll deal with that then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. We now have Councillor Pauls.
Thank you. And through the chair, I am supporting this. I just wanted to say that once we have done this comprehensive report on safety enhancement, given the road width classification, surrounding land use, proximity to the schools and playground, since I am so close to Ward 8, wouldn't that same result overflow to Ward 7? Because we're really right next to each other. Matter of fact, part of it was Ward 7 the last term. So the same result, the same review through the chair, I want to ask Mr. Soldo, would that review also be with Ward 7?
Edward.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor, similar to the questions posed by the previous speaker, right now we are focusing on the award that the motion is identified on, but if there is similarities in terms of solutions that we can implement, we would obviously look at that in any situation that might happen across the city, not just in the other wards. So if you wanted to have a specific ward study, we would have to have that discussion. But I'm sure that out of this study, there will be solutions that we can implement to other locations as well across the city.
And that's what I mean. I don't really need to do the study because the study is down to Ward 8 and it overflows my ward as well. So thank you for that. And I am supportive of that. I think I've had a lot of complaints with speeding, with traffic calming, all that. So it's nice that we are doing the study to see where the problems are. And since we're so connected to each other, Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 8, I think we can implement it on all wards. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pauls, and we now have Councillor Nan.
Thank you. Through the acting chair to staff, or actually it's just general comment. Actually, the question's been asked and answered. In support of this motion, I think this is absolutely the right approach in terms of a holistic study and dealing with all the issues across neighborhoods in order to have a comprehensive ward strategy. Absolutely been talking about this since we came into office as well, given the concerns around not just the behavior of speeding, but the infrastructure in place to support safe neighborhoods and to ensure that vehicle traffic and multimodal systems are working in concert and working towards a synergy that allow people to move freely and ensure that our neighborhoods are safe. So absolutely in support of this kind of approach. The systemic nature of the analysis is critical rather than individual piecemeal strategies that get advocated for outside of a larger context in terms of how one intervention may be impacting a different neighborhood, and instead being able to provide that holistic landscape in terms of completing our neighborhoods and ensuring primarily that our streets are safe for the residents who live there and for the businesses there. So yeah, in favor. Congratulations, great motion, and looking forward to seeing the results of your study.
Thank you, Councillor Nam. We have no further speakers, and it's moved by Danko and seconded by myself. All in favor, and it's an electronic vote. And that is carried. And now we're moving on to the second motion. Councillor Danko, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair Marula. This is an investment in recreational facilities in Ward 8. whereas the majority of the City of Hamilton owned facilities and park assets in Ward 8 are maintained by the City of Hamilton Facilities, Operations and Maintenance section of the Energy Fleet and Facilities Management Division in Public Works, whereas many of the current recreational facilities in Ward 8 are in need of repair and upgrades, whereas building repairs and improvements related to mechanical replacements, painting, improved lighting, landscaping, minor roof repairs, exterior restoration, and overall general maintenance will be undertaken at recreational facilities, including pools, arenas, and parks throughout Ward 8. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be authorized and directed to complete the upgrades and repairs to the facilities listed below at an estimated cost of $100,000 to be funded from the Ward 8 Area Rating Reserve. And it's covering investments in Mountain Arena, that's Dave Andrechuk Mountain Arena, the Westmount Recreation Center, Walker Pool, the Bruce Park Fieldhouse, the Gorley Park Fieldhouse, and the Buchanan Park Fieldhouse. And finally, that the mayor and clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents with terms and conditions satisfactory to the city solicitor. And just really briefly on this, this was an initiative that we started with facility staff pre-COVID, but facility staff have accelerated their work through the COVID shutdown in order to carry out a number of these repairs already. So a lot of this work has already been done or is scheduled to be done or is in progress. And this is simply assigning the financing, which we weren't able to get onto the agenda until today. So I'm just going to go through really quickly a list of some of the work that has that's being completed under this program, just to give committee an idea of specifically what's included here. So at the Mountain Skating Center, which is at the Dave Andrechuk Mountain Arena, this is on the figure skating side. They're doing some badly needed repainting of the inside of the rink. They're epoxy painting the rink floor while the ice is not there, installing some new heaters to make the area a bit more comfortable, and they're doing some catch basin work on the in the parking lot. At Westmount, they're going to paint pickleball court lines in the gym, Councillor Pauls. You'll be happy to hear that. And replacing some of the gym lighting with more energy efficient lighting. And then they're going to repurpose the lighting that was already there to some other areas throughout the recreation center. They're also looking at installing 4 AODA compliant parking spots at the entrance. And that requires some curb cuts and some minor work of the parking lot in order to install those. At Walker Pool, there's some work to be done on some of the wooden beams to improve the aesthetics and make sure that they're preserved. There's some cleaning and trimming, some landscaping around the pool and the Trieste Bocce Club that's adjacent. The pool basin itself, while it was not in operation, it's going to be sandblasted and epoxy repainted, and they've done part of that already. And the next half of that will be, prior to the 2021 season. At Bruce Park, they're looking at doing some touch-ups to the hut there that's at the park. So soffit and fascia, some painting. There's holes in the soffit and fascia where animals are able to get in, so they're going to patch all those up. Preventative maintenance, and kind of the same sort of work at the Gorley Park and also Buchanan Park community huts there. With the exception that in Gorley Park, they're also going to replace the furnace, which I believe has already been done. So anyway, it's quite an extensive list of sort of these, minor maintenance stuff throughout the ward that that we were just able to accelerate and get done all at once, partially because of this funding being available, and partially also because of the really good work by our facilities staff in taking advantage of the COVID shutdown. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Danko. And we have a couple of speakers, and Councillor Whitehead and Jackson, with Councillor Whitehead being first. Councillor Whitehead, the floor is yours.
And I think this, as the previous motion by the good councillor, I think this one is laudable for sure. I just have some questions to Rom, because it always concerns me. I was there for the grand opening Walker's Pool during being a counselor. So that wasn't done very long ago, and it was significant renovations went into that pool. So are we at the life cycle? Is that what this is? Clarification.
Rob Gatto is acting at this point for Rome D'Angelo. Rob, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of council. Through the chair, we're dealing with aging infrastructure, and our funds are needed for minor maintenance items for work we not typically get. So due to not having enough operating dollars nor the capital funds, that's why we thought that it would be a good opportunity during COVID to get this work done and completed.
Yeah, no, I applaud that. I guess my question is, I guess I'm trying to understand the difference between what I call warranty work and maintenance work. So Walker's Pool was completely refurbished a number of years ago. I mean, completely refurbished. I was there for the grand opening. Counselor, so are we looking at when you're talking about the actual base of the pool? Is that a maintenance issue, or is that a warranty issue?
Rob?
Through the chair, I'd have to get back to answer that question.
Okay, so the same question to Westmount, although it's not a warranty issue, it is it's a fairly recent rec center, as everyone knows. Fairly significant amount of money went into it, and then we took the balance of it and sent it down to help Bernie Morelli center be built because it needed to be, and I was fully supportive of that. So the lighting would have been identified in the spec. Did we get that wrong?
Right now, I'd have to go back to staff to find the warranty and the project work that was completed.
Because if in spec we had the right lighting and the wrong lighting is put in there and we're replacing it now, it only makes sense that should be at the expense of the builder, not the expense of the city.
Okay, on that front, though, Councillor Whitehead, since he doesn't have the information before him and he's acting on behalf of Rome D'Angelo, could he get back to us on the particular questions?
I was just indicating that it has to be done. I don't have any problem supporting what's before us, but just want to make sure where there is a warranty opportunity, we should be exploring. That's the point.
Agreed, wholeheartedly. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead, and now we're moving on, and we have Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Acting Chairman, just similarly on Westmount, and I'm very supportive of the restoration and repair work that Councillor Danko's brought forward. Councillor Whitehead was the champion about 5-6 years ago to get that magnificent $20 million new Westmount Recreation Center facility built. And it was part of the former tri-party federal, provincial, and municipal infrastructure program. So I must admit, and I gave Councillor Danko a little bit of a heads up the other day, that I was a little bit surprised, a little perplexed, being just about a 5 or 6 year old facility of some of the repair or restoration work that needs to be done. If something new is being added, that's entirely different. But so maybe Rob Gatto, the acting director, could also get back to my office as well, since both Councillor Whitehead and I were there 5-6 years ago, as you were, Mr. Acting Chair, just to understand exactly why some of the maintenance work of a magnificent $20 million next to new facility is still being required. Thanks, Mr. Acting Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Rob, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, through the chair, I'll look into it and we'll report back.
Okay, fair enough. We have no further speakers, so on the motion itself, it's moved by Councillor Danko, seconded by me. All in favor, and it's an electronic vote. And that carries. And the chair is yours, Councillor Danko. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marua. On to notices of motion. We have item 10.1, Sir Alan McNabb tennis court improvements. Councillor Whitehead, I understand that you will be moving to waive the rules of order to allow this to be introduced as a motion.
That's correct. I actually have two notice motions just to provide you. One will be the ward-wide safety audit, traffic safety audit as well. Same motions you had.
Okay.
So the first one is being waived by Councillor, moved by myself, second by Councillor Marilla, to waive the rules to allow the Charlotte McNabb tennis court improvements come in.
And the purpose for waiving the rules?
Because we're in COVID, they can't be used.
Okay.
So we're fixing them.
Okay, so all in favor of waiving the rules? Thank you. Councillor Whitehead, please introduce your motion.
So I actually don't have the motion in front of me, but it's basically, I think it's 400,000, I believe, coming out of my account to fix it. This Mr. Mayor or Mr. Chair is a multi-use facility at Charlotte McNabb school, and it was in ill repair when I was first elected, unusable. Staff at the time couldn't find the capital. So I just basically said, look, either take it down, we got to fix it. We found the money, and we put a beautiful multi-use facility. Again, back to life cycle. We're starting to get the cracks and the crevices, which makes it unusable. So this is basically the maintenance costs and ensuring that we're not taking it out of the capital that used for other important issues. We're using it out of the area rating, so it only impacts Ward 8 residents.
Ward 14 residents.
Oh, sorry. Still 15 years in Ward 8. That I'm still stuck in that mode. Sorry, you're right. Ward 14.
Okay. Any discussion on? Sorry, who is your seconder? Councillor Marula.
Yes.
Any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And then this is a motion, Councillor Whitehead.
Yeah. So the second one is replicating yours, is just plugging in Ward 14.
Okay. And you're gonna leave that as a notice of motion?
Yeah, I can leave that for a notice of motion unless, yeah, there's not urgency. I can bring it back unless council wants to dispose of it today. I'm at the will of the chair and the committee.
I think it would be good to talk to staff, and if you are want to move ahead with that, there might be efficiencies to combine the two.
That's fair.
So,
the reason I'm raising it is because I was going to pursue Mohawk College like I did with Rolston. Ed has made it clear that they don't have the qualifications to do so. So if that's the case, then that takes that piece out. So it only makes sense that I pursue it the way you did, which is commendable.
All right, so we'll leave that as a notice.
Fair enough.
You have that, Madam Clerk? Yes. All right. On to general information and other business. We have the amendments to the outstanding business list, which are before you. I need a mover and a seconder to approve the amendments to the outstanding business list. Who's going to move this? Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Any discussion? Councillor Collins? Sorry, can't hear you, Councillor.
Make under other business. So at that point in time, if you can come back.
Sorry, what was that?
I have a statement to make or under other business, if you could come back to me.
Okay. So we're going to vote on the outstanding business list. All in favor? Councillor Ferguson, are you still there? Don't see him. So we're going to mark Councillor Ferguson as absent. And that carries, thank you. And Councillor Collins on other business.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Brian Carey and Parks, as well as Kara Bunn for their assistance on the beach. You know, we've had a couple of trying years on the beach strip with flooding and other issues that have affected the neighborhood. But this year, we just purchased a beach grooming machine, and it was purchased in 2019, and it's just operational over the last week or two. And the response from people who live in the neighborhood and from trail users has been significant, and nothing but praise for the city in terms of a heightened level of maintenance. We had a beach grooming machine since the late 90s when I worked with the neighborhood association there to have that purchased and made operational. But it just over the last couple of years, too many maintenance issues with it. And so we purchased new equipment, and Brian and Kara have done terrific work in terms of getting it onto the beach. And as I said, the response has been terrific. And then just most recently, same area, Brian and Kara assisted with a request that we received in July from a family who has a disabled family member who wanted access to the sand and almost, I think, right down to the lake. And in other communities across Canada, and I know I've witnessed them in operation in Prince Edward Island, there are these mats that can be purchased for the disabled so that those with devices can actually get onto the sand and get close to the water. And so within a couple of weeks, Kara and Brian worked with the family and worked with my office to purchase those mats. I understand they may be in place before the end of the summer. And again, residents as well as the family have called to provide thanks to the city. And that's in large part because of the communication and work ethic of both Brian and Kara and their staff on the beach. So I couldn't let those two issues pass without thanking them for their efforts. And I think on the second issue that I've raised for the mats for the disabled, if I could just ask that staff provide an update to ACPD when they're meeting again on the purchase of those mats and what they'll do to increase accessibility to the beach strip. I think the committee would probably enjoy or appreciate an update in that regard. So if I could just make that request to staff that that information be passed along to them, I think it'd be beneficial. Thanks for the opportunity to raise those issues.
Thank you, Councillor. That's really great news to hear, and it's fascinating how the residents of our city are sort of rediscovering some of those natural areas, and they're getting a lot more use during the pandemic. So that's fantastic news. Thank you. On other business, Councillor Whitehead, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I want to thank Mr. Hoffman. He sent me a number of suggestions for winter in the context of COVID. People want to stay active, and it gets much more restrictive, obviously, in the winter months. Sidewalks, for example, in respect to social distancing and active activities to stay healthy, whether it's our trails and so forth. So I'm wondering, is there a strategy through Public Works to take a look at what we currently have and what we need in context of enhancements or options that we can meet the needs of this community in the COVID time, because of COVID?
Is there anybody on staff that might like to address that? General Manager McKinnon?
Yeah, hi there, Dan McKinnon, General Manager. I'm not aware that any of our teams have been actively working on such an idea, but we're certainly happy to take it back and report back to Council on that.
So maybe the best way to do that, Mr. Chair, is, and we don't have to do it today, I'll work with Dan, who's a great guy, and we'll bring a motion forward to have them take a look at what options we can do to enhance people's lives during the winter months. As we know, it's not like you can run through a park unless you actually provide an opportunity to do so, and those kinds of things. So I will do that, and I want to thank Dan for at least hearing me. And I want to thank Mr. Hoffman for, because I never really thought about it in those terms, but it is important that we don't restrict. In fact, we enhance opportunities for people to get outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I agree, that sounds like a really positive initiative, and it kind of builds on the mobility plan that we're already putting in place. So appreciate that. Any further business from anyone? Not seeing. Oh, Councillor Pearson.
Motion to adjourn. No.
Motion to adjourn. All right. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Whitehead. All in favor of adjournment. And that passes. Oh, who voted against? Councillor Whitehead. Thank you, everyone.